So go ahead and take out your journal. Write today's date, September 21st, 2020. I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals. Pause the video, get your I can statement written, and then come back and join me. The first thing that we want to review is adding and subtracting decimals. And if you remember, this was before Ms. Mullinex started teaching multiplying decimals. So I want to give you a couple of things that are Ms. Mullinex's always, always, always. So put a plus and a minus sign. When you are adding and subtracting decimals, or even whole numbers, actually, when you're adding and subtracting, you always, put that in capital letters, always line up place value. You have to add and subtract the same units or the same place value. So we always want to line up the same place value. And then the other great big wonderful thing that you have to remember when you're adding and subtracting is that we always add and subtract vertically. I'm going to show you what that means. The first thing that we want to talk about is lining up place value. So have you ever heard the saying, you can't add apples and oranges? 3 apples plus 2 oranges equals 5 apples? No. Does it equal 5 oranges? No, because you can't add apples and oranges. Same thing with adding numbers or adding units. 3/10 plus 2/100 does not equal 5/10, and it does not equal 5/100. Okay? We have to add apples to apples or oranges to oranges. We have to add tenths to tenths, hundredths to hundredths, ones to ones, thousands to thousands. Okay? So that's the first thing that we have to know. The next thing is that we always add and subtract vertically. When you see a problem written like this, 3 1800 plus 4 9600, that is written horizontally. Girls and boys, it is much, much, much easier to add and subtract numbers vertically. So we are going to erase that second addend, and we are going to line our numbers up, line up those place values. It was 4 9600. My hundredths are lined up, my tenths are lined up, my ones are lined up. The best way to know that your numbers are lined up is if your decimals are lined up. Okay? So then we can just add like we do whole numbers. 8 and 6 is 14. Carry the 1. 9 and 1 is 10, and 1 more makes 11. 4 and 3 is 7, and 1 more makes 8. Your decimal has to come down, straight down, because this is the ones place, the tenths, and the hundredths. Watch a subtraction problem. 6 and 5/10 minus 47/100. Okay? Everything is lined up. The hundredths, the tenths, and the ones place. 5 minus 7. Can't do it. I have to go next door and borrow. Nope, nothing to take here. Got to go next door and borrow. That 6 becomes a 5, and this 0 becomes a 10. Come back to the hundredths. 5 minus 7, still can't do it. That 10 becomes a 9, and this 5 becomes a 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. 9 minus 4 is 5. 5 minus nothing is 5. That decimal has to come straight down because this 8 is in the hundredths place, 5 is in the tenths place, and that 5 is in the ones place. Let me show you one more. If I had the problem 3 and 4/10 plus 67/100, look at how I would line that up vertically. 3 and 4/10 plus, would I put the 67/100 here? No, because this is the tenths place and this is in the hundredths place. I cannot add tenths and hundredths. You have to make sure that your places are lined up. 67/100. Let me get rid of this so that I can show you. And something we learned with division last week, I see an empty place here in the hundredths. Girls and boys, after a decimal, at the end of a number, I can put a 0 here and it will not change the value of 3 and 4/10 because 3 and 4/10 is equivalent to 3 and 40/100. Now I can add hundredths to hundredths, tenths to tenths, and ones to ones. Great review on adding and subtracting decimals.